Steve Harvey secretly walks into his own restaurant and stops cold when he hears a server crying. Behind the glitz and glamour of success, there's a raw, unfiltered moment waiting to unfold. In the next few minutes, you'll witness how one man's unexpected encounter with vulnerability becomes a turning point, not just for one person, but for an entire community. This is the story of authenticity, compassion, and the power of truly listening. The city lights flicker and dance outside the tall glass windows as Steve Harvey pushes through the heavy wooden doors of his restaurant. The cool evening air brushes against his face, grounding him in the moment. Tonight, he's not here as the famous talk show host with the infectious laugh that millions know and love. He's not here as the polished public figure who commands stages and captivates audiences with his charm and wisdom. Tonight, he's just Steve, a man seeking a moment of genuine peace and solitude, away from the relentless, suffocating spotlight that follows him everywhere he goes. He moves quietly through the bustling dining room, his hoodie pulled low over his head, his baseball cap casting a deep shadow over his face. He's learned over the years that anonymity in public spaces is a rare and precious gift. The restaurant thrums with vibrant energy, genuine laughter echoing off the walls, the cheerful clinking of glasses toasting to celebrations, the intoxicating and mouth-watering aroma of perfectly prepared food wafting through every corner. It's the kind of warm, welcoming atmosphere he's always dreamed of creating. A sanctuary where people come to escape their troubles, to celebrate life's precious moments, to connect with loved ones. He weaves carefully through the tables, nodding subtly to staff members who don't recognize him, observing the intricate dance of service that keeps everything running smoothly. Pride swells in his chest as he watches his team work with precision and care. But as he continues his quiet journey through the dining room, something stops him dead in his tracks, something that makes his blood run cold. Beneath the joyful din of conversation and clinking silverware, piercing through the laughter and soft background music, is a sound that makes his heart sink like a stone. A faint, unmistakable sob. Soft, broken, utterly real. It's the kind of cry that cuts through all the noise, that demands to be heard by anyone with a conscience. Steve freezes mid-step, his entire body going rigid. His eyes narrow as he tilts his head, listening more carefully, trying desperately to pinpoint exactly where the sound is coming from. It's not the kind of cry you hear in a crowded room, not the emotional tears of joy or the laughter-filled sobs of happiness. It's the kind of cry someone makes when they think absolutely no one is listening, when they believe they're completely, utterly alone, when they've reached a breaking point. His protective instinct kicks in immediately, surging through his veins like electricity. Something is deeply, profoundly wrong. He can feel it in his bones. He glances around the dining room carefully, observing the faces of his guests, the expressions of his staff. But no one else seems to notice. The servers move seamlessly between tables. The guests remain blissfully oblivious, lost in their own conversations and celebrations. The music plays on. The laughter continues. But Steve hears it, and he won't ignore it. He takes a deep, measured breath, his casual demeanor shifting in an instant. The hoodie and cap that were meant to provide anonymity suddenly feel like a disguise he needs to shed. His protective nature, honed by years of experience and wisdom, takes over. He moves toward the kitchen with purpose, his pace quickening, his mind racing with urgent questions. What could possibly be happening behind the scenes of his own establishment? Who is crying? What kind of pain could be so overwhelming that it breaks through the festive atmosphere of a thriving restaurant? As his hand reaches for the kitchen door, he hesitates for just a moment, his fingers hovering over the handle. He knows that opening this door means stepping into someone else's private pain. It means confronting a reality that exists beneath the surface of his successful business. What he's about to discover will shake him to his core. And he has absolutely no idea just how much this single moment, this split-second decision, will change everything. The kitchen door looms before him, a threshold between the polished world he's created and the raw, unfiltered reality that exists behind the scenes. His heart pounds in his chest as he pushes it open, the hinges creaking softly. But what Steve doesn't know, what he can't possibly comprehend in this moment, is that behind that door lies a story far deeper than he could have ever imagined. A story of struggle, of silent battles fought in the shadows, of dreams deferred and hopes nearly extinguished. And in the next few moments, his life is about to intersect with someone else's in a way that will test his compassion, challenge his assumptions, and ultimately remind him why he built this place in the first place. The moment of truth awaits on the other side of that door. The kitchen door swings open, and Steve steps into a completely different world. The warmth of the dining room gives way to the intense heat of the kitchen, the sizzle of pans, the sharp calls of the head chef coordinating the brigade, the rhythmic chopping of knives against cutting boards. It's organized chaos, a symphony of culinary precision that Steve has always found both exhilarating and comforting. But his attention is immediately drawn away from the controlled frenzy of food preparation. In the far corner, partially hidden behind the walk-in freezer, he spots her. A young server, no more than 25, sitting on a small crate with her face buried in her hands. Her shoulders shake with each silent sob, her whole body trembling with the weight of whatever burden she's carrying. Her name is Emily. Steve has seen her working the floor countless times over the past few months. Always with a smile, always attentive to her tables, always going above and beyond to make sure guests have an exceptional experience. She's one of his most reliable employees, someone who genuinely cares about the work she does. But in this moment, all that professionalism crumbles away, revealing the vulnerable human being underneath. Steve's heart breaks at the sight of her. He takes a careful step forward, trying to decide how to approach this delicate situation. He doesn't want to startle her, doesn't want to invade her privacy. But he also can't simply walk away and pretend he didn't see her. That's not who he is. "Emily?" he says softly, his voice gentle and measured, stripped of any of the commanding authority he usually carries. Emily's head snaps up immediately, her eyes wide with shock and panic. For a moment, she doesn't recognize him. The hoodie, the cap, the casual appearance throwing her off. But then realization dawns on her face, and her expression transforms into something far more complicated. Fear, embarrassment, shame. "Oh my God," she whispers, quickly wiping her tears with the back of her hand, smudging her mascara across her cheeks. "I'm so sorry. I wasn't." She scrambles to her feet, her voice becoming rushed and panicked. "I'm okay. I'm fine. I'll get back to work right now. I'm so sorry you had to see that." Steve holds up his hands in a calming gesture, his expression warm and understanding. Hey, it's okay. Take a breath. You're not in trouble." But Emily can't seem to stop the flood of words pouring out of her. Her hands are shaking, her eyes darting around the kitchen, clearly mortified that anyone, let alone her boss, has witnessed her emotional breakdown. "I just needed a minute," she continues, her voice cracking. "I promise I'm professional. I've never done this before. It's been a really hard day. A really hard week, actually. But that's no excuse. I should be able to handle my personal problems on my own time, not here, not at work. I'm so embarrassed. Steve can see the shame written all over her face, the way she's trying desperately to compose herself, to put on the mask of the cheerful, capable server that her customers expect to see. It's a mask he knows all too well. The performance that comes with the job. The expectation that you leave your problems at the door and show up as the best version of yourself, regardless of what's happening in your personal life. He reaches out and gently touches her shoulder, his voice dropping even lower, more intimate. "Emily, look at me," he says quietly. "You're not in trouble, and you don't need to apologize for being human. Whatever you're going through, it's valid. Your feelings are valid." Emily's eyes fill with fresh tears at his kindness, at the unexpected compassion coming from the man she works for. She's so accustomed to pushing through, to suffering in silence, to believing that showing emotion at work is a sign of weakness or unprofessionalism. But here, in this moment, Steve is telling her something completely different. I don't know how to handle it all," she admits, her voice barely above a whisper. "Everything feels like too much right now." Steve nods, understanding in his eyes. He gestures toward the small break room just off the kitchen. "Come on," he says gently. "Let's step away from all this noise for a minute. Let's talk." As Emily follows him, her heart racing with a mixture of fear and cautious hope. She has no idea that this moment, this unexpected encounter with her boss in the kitchen, is about to become a turning point in her life. She doesn't know that Steve's willingness to listen, to see her pain without judgment, will open doors she thought were permanently closed. But as they walk toward the break room, Emily can't shake the feeling that something significant is about to happen. Something that will change how she sees herself, how she sees her struggles, and how she sees the possibility of asking for help. The real conversation is about to begin. The break room is a stark contrast to the bustling energy of the kitchen. It's a small, modest space with worn furniture, a refrigerator humming quietly in the corner, and a single window that overlooks the alley behind the restaurant. The fluorescent lights cast a harsh glow. But somehow, in this moment, it feels like a sanctuary, a place where the noise of the world can't reach them. Steve gestures for Emily to sit on one of the old couches, and he settles into a chair across from her, giving her space while also making it clear that he's fully present, fully listening. He removes his baseball cap and hoodie, and for the first time, Emily sees him clearly. Not as the famous Steve Harvey, but as a real person, someone who has clearly taken the time to come find her. Emily sits down slowly, her hands fidgeting in her lap, her eyes still wet with tears. She's terrified of saying the wrong thing, of oversharing, of making this awkward situation even worse. But Steve's calm presence somehow makes it easier to breathe. "So," Steve begins, his voice warm and genuine, "tell me what's going on, and I want you to know that whatever you share with me stays between us. This is a safe space." Emily takes a shaky breath, and for a long moment she doesn't say anything. She's been holding this in for so long, carrying this weight alone, that the idea of actually speaking it out loud feels terrifying. What if he judges her? What if he thinks less of her? What if this somehow affects her job? But then she looks into Steve's eyes, and she sees something there that she hasn't seen in a very long time. Genuine care. Not pity, not judgment. Just authentic human compassion. "I'm losing my apartment," Emily says quietly, the words tumbling out before she can stop them. "My landlord gave me an eviction notice 2 weeks ago. I'm 3 months behind on rent, and I can't catch up. I've been working here, and I have another job on the weekends. But it's still not enough. The cost of living keeps going up, and my paychecks keep staying the same. She pauses, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. I've been trying so hard to keep it together, to show up and do my job well, to not let anyone know what's happening. But today, one of my tables was really rude to me. They sent their food back 3 times, complained about everything, and left no tip. And I broke. I couldn't hold it together anymore. Steve listens intently, not interrupting, not offering quick fixes or platitudes. He simply listens, allowing Emily to speak her truth, to articulate the pain that's been building inside her. I'm 25 years old. Emily continues, her voice growing stronger as she speaks. And I feel like I'm failing at everything. I went to college. I have a degree. But I'm still struggling to afford basic necessities. I'm watching my friends buy houses and start families, and I'm just trying to figure out how to keep a roof over my head. Sometimes I wonder if I'm ever going to get out of this cycle. The vulnerability in her words hangs in the air between them. This is the real Emily, not the smiling server who takes orders and delivers food with a cheerful demeanor, but the young woman carrying an enormous burden, trying to survive in a world that often feels rigged against people like her. Steve leans forward slightly, his expression serious and thoughtful. Emily, first of all, I want you to know that you're not failing, he says firmly. You're doing everything right. You're working 2 jobs. You're showing up. You're trying. The system is what's failing you, not the other way around. Emily's eyes fill with tears again, but this time they're different. Tears of relief, of being seen and understood. I've been where you are, Steve continues, his voice taking on a reflective quality. Not exactly the same circumstances, but I've known what it feels like to struggle, to wonder if things will ever get better, to feel like the odds are stacked against you. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that this moment, this struggle, doesn't define your future. He pauses, choosing his words carefully. But I also want to be real with you. You shouldn't have to work 2 jobs just to survive. You shouldn't be one bad day away from a complete breakdown. And you definitely shouldn't be losing sleep over whether you'll have a place to live. Steve stands up and walks to the small window, looking out at the alley for a moment before turning back to face Emily. I want to help you, he says simply. Not as your boss, but as someone who believes in you and wants to see you succeed. But before I do that, I need to understand the full picture. What would it take for you to get caught up on your rent? What's the number we're talking about here? Emily hesitates, clearly uncomfortable with the idea of asking for help. She's been conditioned to believe that struggling is a personal failure, that asking for assistance is a sign of weakness. I don't know if I can accept help, she says quietly. I don't want charity. I want to earn my way out of this. Steve nods, understanding her pride, respecting it even. I hear you, he says. And I'm not offering you charity. I'm offering you an opportunity. But let's talk about what that could look like. What if there were ways to increase your income? What if there were resources available to you that you didn't know about? What if you weren't alone in this? Emily looks up at him, hope and fear warring in her expression. What are you saying? She asks softly. Steve sits back down, his eyes locked on hers. I'm saying, he begins, that your story doesn't end here. This is just one chapter, and I want to help you write the next one. In that moment, something shifts inside Emily. For the first time in months, she feels like maybe, just maybe, things could get better. Maybe she's not as alone as she thought she was. Maybe there are people in the world who see her struggle and want to help, not out of pity, but out of genuine human connection. But neither of them knows yet just how far this conversation will go, or how many other lives will be touched by the decision Steve is about to make. The break room suddenly feels less like a small, confined space, and more like the birthplace of something transformative. Over the next few weeks, Steve becomes deeply invested in Emily's situation. He doesn't just offer her money, that would be too simple, too transactional. Instead, he takes a more comprehensive approach, one that addresses not just her immediate crisis, but the underlying issues that got her there in the first place. First, he helps Emily negotiate with her landlord. Using his connections and his reputation, Steve personally calls the landlord and works out a payment plan that allows Emily to keep her apartment while gradually paying back the overdue rent. It's not a complete forgiveness of the debt, but it's a lifeline, a chance to breathe, to stabilize. But Steve doesn't stop there. He sits down with Emily and helps her create a realistic budget, showing her how to track her spending and identify areas where she can save money without sacrificing her basic needs. He introduces her to financial literacy resources, connects her with a nonprofit that helps young professionals navigate the complexities of personal finance. Most importantly, Steve offers Emily something that money can't buy: mentorship. He begins meeting with her regularly, not just to discuss her financial situation, but to talk about her dreams, her aspirations, her long-term goals. He learns that Emily has a degree in business management, but has never felt confident enough to pursue a career in that field. She's been working as a server because it felt safer, more immediate, more achievable. "Why are you limiting yourself?" Steve asks her during one of their mentoring sessions, sitting in his office above the restaurant. "Because I'm scared," Emily admits, her vulnerability on full display. "What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? I have a degree, but I don't have experience. Who's going to hire me?" Steve leans back in his chair, a knowing smile on his face. "Emily, let me tell you something I've learned over decades in this business," he says. "Fear is just a feeling. It's not a fact. And the only way to overcome it is to move through it, not around it." He stands up and walks to a wall in his office covered with photographs, images of Steve at various stages of his life, from his early days as a comedian to his rise as a talk show host. "Every single one of these moments," he continues, pointing to the photos, "came after a moment of fear. There was a time when I didn't think I was good enough to be on television. There was a time when I thought I'd never make it in comedy. But I pushed through the fear, and look where I am now." Emily studies the photographs, seeing Steve's journey laid out before her. "What if I mess up?" she asks. "Then you'll learn from it and do better next time," Steve says simply. "That's not failure, Emily. That's growth." Word of Steve's mentorship with Emily begins to spread through the restaurant. Other employees start noticing the change in her. The way she carries herself with more confidence, the way she talks about her future with hope instead of resignation. And slowly, other staff members begin opening up to Steve about their own struggles. There's Marcus, a line cook in his 30s, who's been working minimum wage jobs his entire adult life and has never had access to health care. There's Jasmine, a hostess who dropped out of college because she couldn't afford tuition and has been working to support her younger siblings. There's David, a dishwasher who has a criminal record and struggles to find employment that will accept him. Steve realizes that Emily's situation isn't unique. She's just one of many people working in his restaurant who are struggling to survive in a system that doesn't seem designed to help them. And he begins to ask himself a difficult question. What responsibility does he have, as someone in a position of privilege and power, to help change that? One evening, after the restaurant is closed, Steve calls a staff meeting. Everyone gathers in the dining room, confused and slightly nervous about what this is about. Steve stands at the front, his expression serious but warm. "I want to talk to you all about something," he begins. "Over the past few weeks, I've had the privilege of getting to know many of you on a deeper level. And I've come to realize that many of you are facing challenges that go far beyond what any of you should have to face, while working hard, honest jobs." He pauses, looking around the room at the faces of his employees, people he's worked alongside for months or even years, but whose real struggles he's only recently begun to understand. "I've decided to make some changes," Steve continues. "Effective immediately, I'm raising the minimum wage for all employees in this restaurant to $15 an hour. I'm also implementing a benefits package that includes health insurance, dental, vision, and a 401k matching program." There's a moment of stunned silence, and then the room erupts. Some people cry, some people cheer, some people just sit there in disbelief, as if they're not sure they've heard correctly. But Steve isn't done. "Additionally," he says, raising his voice to be heard over the commotion, "I'm creating an education fund. If any of you want to go back to school, pursue a certification, or develop new skills, I will help fund that. No loans, no strings attached, just an investment in your future." Emily's hand flies to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. This is more than she ever expected. This is transformative. "Why are you doing this?" Marcus asks, his voice thick with emotion. Steve takes a moment before answering, his expression thoughtful. "Because," he says slowly, "I've spent my entire career talking about the importance of hard work, determination, and believing in yourself. But I realized that I was only telling half the story. The truth is, hard work alone isn't always enough. Sometimes people need more than just motivation. They need actual support. They need someone to believe in them and to back that belief up with real, tangible help." He looks directly at Emily. "Emily taught me that," Steve continues. "She was working 2 jobs, doing everything right, and still barely surviving. That's not a reflection of her worth or her work ethic. That's a reflection of a broken system. And while I can't fix the entire system, I can make a difference in this space, in this restaurant, for this group of people." Over the following months, the impact of Steve's decisions begins to ripple outward in ways he couldn't have predicted. Emily uses the education fund to pursue a business management certificate, and within a year, she's promoted to a management position in the restaurant. Marcus finally gets the health care he needs and discovers he has a treatable condition that had been affecting his quality of life. Jasmine returns to college, working part-time at the restaurant while pursuing her degree. But perhaps most importantly, something shifts in the culture of the restaurant itself. It becomes a place where people feel valued, not just as workers, but as human beings, where their struggles are acknowledged and their dreams are supported, where the owner isn't just someone who signs their paychecks, but someone who genuinely cares about their well-being. And Steve himself is transformed by the experience. He realizes that his platform, his success, his resources, they all mean something only if he uses them to lift others up. That true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the positive impact you have on the lives of those around you. But as the restaurant thrives and his employees flourish, Steve begins to wonder, what if he could expand this model? What if he could create a blueprint for how businesses could operate differently, prioritizing both profit and people? What if Emily's story could inspire a movement? The answer to those questions is about to arrive in the form of an unexpected visitor. Someone whose presence will challenge everything Steve has built and force him to confront questions he's never had to ask before. Change is coming, and it will be bigger than any of them imagined. Margaret Chen, a renowned business consultant, walks into Steve's restaurant. For 40 years, she's helped corporations maximize profits. But she's grown tired of the system. She's been watching Steve's operation for 6 months and is impressed by what she sees. In Steve's office, Margaret reveals her findings. Employee turnover down 70%. Customer satisfaction up 40%. Revenue up 25%. She proposes a partnership to scale his model across multiple businesses. "I want to help you change how businesses operate," Margaret says. "But only if we keep the soul intact, if we genuinely prioritize people." Steve agrees on one condition: Emily must be part of this expansion. He calls her to his office. When Emily arrives, Margaret extends her hand warmly. "Your story matters," Margaret tells her. "You're going to be the voice of this movement." Emily, stunned and honored, nods in agreement. The three of them stand at the threshold of something bigger than any of them imagined. A potential revolution in how American businesses operate. But they don't yet know the obstacles ahead, the compromises they'll face, or the difficult choices that will test their commitment. The real work is about to begin. Over the next 3 months, Steve, Margaret, and Emily meet weekly to develop what they call the Dignity Model, a comprehensive business framework that prioritizes both profitability and employee well-being. Margaret brings her corporate expertise, creating detailed financial projections and operational strategies. Steve contributes his real-world restaurant experience and his genuine commitment to people. Emily provides the crucial perspective of someone who has lived the struggle, ensuring that every decision is grounded in the reality of working people's lives. The model includes living wages indexed to local cost of living, comprehensive healthcare, dental, and vision coverage, paid time off and mental health support, education and skills development programs, clear pathways for career advancement, profit sharing for all employees. But as they develop the blueprint, they face their first real challenge. One evening, Margaret presents a financial analysis that shows the model works beautifully for Steve's single restaurant, but scaling it to 10 or 20 locations will require significant capital. "We need investors," Margaret says bluntly. "Venture capitalists, private equity firms, or major corporations willing to fund this expansion." But here's the problem. Most of them will want to water down the model. They'll want to cut corners to maximize returns. Emily feels her stomach tighten. She's seen this pattern before. Ideals compromised for profit. "Then we don't take their money," Emily says firmly. "We find investors who believe in what we're doing." "Those investors are rare," Margaret warns, "and they're hard to find." Steve leans back, thinking. "What if we don't need traditional investors?" he suggests. "What if we create a different model? What if we use the profits from the first restaurant to fund the second, and so on? It'll be slower, but it'll be ours. We won't owe anyone anything except our employees." Margaret considers this, her analytical mind working through the implications. "It's possible," she says slowly. "But it means we're looking at a 5 to 10 year timeline instead of 2 to 3 years. Are you willing to wait that long?" Steve looks at Emily, then back at Margaret. "If it means we do this right, yes," he says. Over the next year, they open their second location, and then a third, Each restaurant becomes a beacon, a proof of concept that the dignity model actually works. Local news outlets pick up the story. Business schools start studying their operations. Other restaurant owners begin reaching out, asking how they can implement similar changes. But success brings new pressures. Larger corporations take notice, and some of them aren't interested in partnership. They're interested in acquisition. Steve receives offers to sell his growing chain for millions of dollars. Each offer is tempting. Each one promises security and stability. One evening, sitting in his office with Margaret and Emily, Steve holds a buyout offer from a major hospitality corporation. They're offering $50 million, he says quietly. That's enough to change my life, to secure my family's future, to ensure I never have to worry about money again. He looks up at them. But it also means losing control. It means watching everything we've built get absorbed into a corporate machine that will inevitably prioritize profit over people. Emily stands up, her voice steady. Then don't take it, she says. Steve, you taught me that some things are worth more than money. You taught me that legacy matters. Don't sell out now. Margaret, surprisingly, nods in agreement. Emily's right, Margaret says. We're at a critical moment. If you sell now, you become just another success story about a guy who got rich. But if you stay the course, you become something much more important. You become proof that another way is possible. Steve tears up the offer letter. Then we keep going, he says. By the end of year 2, they have 8 restaurants across 3 states, all operating under the dignity model. Employee satisfaction scores are consistently above 90%. Turnover remains minimal. And remarkably, profitability is strong. Not as explosive as traditional corporate chains, but steady and sustainable. Emily, who started as a struggling server, is now vice president of operations. She's earned her MBA through the Education Fund and has become the public face of the movement, speaking at business conferences and universities about what's possible when you treat workers with dignity. But as their success grows, so do the threats. Competitors begin spreading rumors that the dignity model is unsustainable. Industry publications question whether their numbers are accurate. And most troubling, some of their own investors, people who believed in the mission, begin pressuring Steve to cut costs and increase profit margins. The real test of their commitment is about to arrive.